That's okay. You're okay. Okay.
We love North Dakota. We love Alberta, too. They're great neighbors. And Premier Kenny, it's good to see you here again. As you know, Montana and Alberta have long worked together. We have strong economic ties. We share firefighting resources. Our electric grids are intertwined. Two of our national parks connect to form the crown of the continent. The partnership between Montana and Alberta, as well as the United States and Canada, creates jobs, it provides energy and food security, and increases the economic prosperity of both of our countries. Unfortunately, in one stroke of a pen, President Biden, hours after being sworn and hours after talking about uniting America, then divided it when he damaged and undermined that partnership we had when he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. Premier, you know better than most what the Keystone XL pipeline meant for jobs, revenues, and energy security. I've been spending time with leaders in Eastern Europe. Vladimir Putin has Eastern Europe and Europe over a barrel right now because of dependencies on Russian oil and gas. And that's why Alberta filed a suit against the United States seeking $1.3 billion in damages. Let me just read a line from that filing. The Biden administration's decision to revoke the Keystone XL pipeline, and I quote, resulted in the loss of thousands of jobs, caused systemic harm to the American, Canadian, and Albertan economies, and diminished the highly integrated North American energy system upon which future North American prosperity will continue to rely. We just saw gas prices at an all-time record. My Montana farmers and ranchers are driving up now and seeing diesel at nearly $6 a gallon. That line from that lawsuit, I think, sums it all up. As you point out in your testimony, when gas and energy prices hit record heights, families are struggling. Instead of calling on U.S. and Canadian producers, President Biden went to OPEC, Venezuela, and Iran. It's like a Babylon Bee parody, but it was reality from this administration. Energy security is national security, and we should be increasing North American production, not going to foreign adversaries. Premier Kenny, do you worry that the Biden administration's arbitrary decision to kill the Keystone XL pipeline, and I say arbitrary because I don't see any sense from an environmental viewpoint, economic viewpoint, it's the most carbon-friendly way to transport a liquid. It kills thousands of jobs. Could that possibly lead to further decisions to kill transporter pipelines? And by the way, there are 70 operating oil and gas pipelines in the United States and Canada as we wake up here today. 31 for oil, 39 natural gas. Could this lead to further decisions that connect Alberta and Canada to the United States? And what can we do to continue to strengthen the Montana-Alberta energy partnership?
Thank you very much, Senator. Good to see you again. The answer is yes. I'm concerned it creates a very problematic precedent to retroactively veto a project that's been approved. The border crossing of that KXL had been built between Saskatchewan and Montana with the government of Alberta as a co-owner. So you have a foreign government investing in a project, making an investment predicated on the certainty of the U.S. regulatory process, clearly in the mutual economic interests of both countries, being retroactively vetoed. And frankly, when I then looked at the political pressure coming from Governor Whitmer to shut down Line 5, which her state depends on as a major energy source, wondering, is it possible a U.S. administration, with a flick of a pen, will shut down a 6-decade-old safely operating pipeline? It's created a serious problem of investor confidence. You are right, the U.S. State Department under former Secretary Clinton concluded not once but twice through exhaustive studies that KXL would have had a lower emissions profile than the alternative, which is increasingly shipping by rail. And I would point out that most of the major U.S. unions supported this, steelworkers, Teamsters, building trades, and others. Now it's done and dusted. KXL is behind us, but I hope that the invasion of Ukraine and the imperative of energy security causes a fundamental rethink about these issues in Washington.
Well, I hope it wakes up the woke, because it's a dangerous ideology, and people are suffering because of what this administration is doing of this keep it in the ground, shut off fossil fuels. And it's a huge concern, as you've heard today here from many on this committee. Premier Kenny, by failing to mirror the aggressive steps that Alberta has taken to increase and streamline timber harvest, the Biden administration has also failed to be a partner to Alberta in pursuing climate objectives. Over the past 2 decades, forests in Montana have actually become a carbon source instead of a carbon sink. A healthy forest absorbs carbon, a burning forest emits carbon. For years, lack of management has had negative impacts on wildlife habitat, ecosystems, watersheds, rural economies, and public safety. But now we're seeing even broader impacts on the housing market with the price of lumber. During the height of the pandemic, the price of lumber more than tripled, and even now, the volatile lumber market has increased the average single-family home price by nearly $20,000. Despite this, Montana lumber production has actually decreased by 11%, and we just had another mill close last December. When I was growing up in Montana, we had over 30 active sawmills. We're down now to one I can count on one hand and one finger. This is not for a lack of supply. Montana has over 9 million acres in need of treatment, and our annual timber harvest is half of what the allowable sale quantity studied and approved in our forest plans. Let me cut to the question here, Mr. Premier. How does this compare to the forestry permitting process in Alberta? And would you agree commercial timber harvest is often the best tool to accomplish our environmental objectives?
Yeah.
Because we're going to see it takes over 5 years to complete an EIS and initiate forest management projects here in the United States.
100%. Fortunately, under our Constitution, provinces also regulate forestry production. And we've seen actually the exact opposite of your experience, a 30% increase in harvesting since 2011, a $6 billion increase in investment in our forestry industry. Last year was the best year in terms of volume of fiber and revenue for the industry. You know, I think I'm glad the province regulates this because we have within our province a large federal park called Jasper, where the forests have been absolutely destroyed by pine beetle because there was no responsible harvesting policy. So I think this vindicates local regulation of forestry.
And we're seeing that in Montana. I'll close here, Mr. Chairman, but our state lands, we're seeing those, under the leadership of our Governor, Gene Forte in Montana, we're seeing increased harvests. Our federal lands, that's the problem. It sounds like it's a similar problem in Canada. Mr. Premier, thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, Senator